Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us with Nigel and with Paul, and I'm going to let Nigel take the introductions.
Thanks, Cindy. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 5th edition of Think Like an Explorer. Today with myself, Nigel Vardy, with Cindy in the hot seat and guest Paul Walker. Now, usually, as you know, we work with Cathy O'Dowd, but she's done what all adventurers do. And she's gone off climbing. Lucky her. I've seen the picture. She's in southern Spain and it is red hot, unlike Britain. Although I've got a bit of sunshine, Paul. What do you like today?
Yeah, we've got a beautiful morning up here, actually. I took my partner to the train station this morning up in Berwick as the sun was rising. Absolutely beautiful. Blue skies, beautiful seaside views, and yeah, fantastic.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, today I've got Paul in really as an expert on this one, because what we're going to talk about is business in a cold climate. Now, I'm going to mean that in two particular senses. Firstly, business has made great problems really for itself since 2007 with the subprime mortgage crisis coming in, and lots of businesses suffering heavily financially, businesses closing, people struggling. And people have called that a cold climate because it's been a very, very difficult place to trade and work. But from an adventurous side, of course, and an exploration side, a great many of us, and Paul's a bit of an expert on this, actually do run business in a cold climate, because the majority of Paul's work takes place on the ice caps of Greenland. Now, it's not for me to tell you all that. That's Paul's little bit. So, Paul, if you just want to explain a little bit about what you actually do up there, and then we'll start discussing that in an adventure and business turn.
Yeah, sure. Well, it started when I was a student, really. I organised a couple of Iceland expeditions for what was Charlotte Mason College up in Ambleside in the Lake District at that time, which was part of Lancaster University. And then the year I graduated, I organised a Greenland expedition. And we headed up there for 9 weeks, spent the whole summer up there, made some first ascents of new peaks. And at the time, I was a freelance outdoor instructor straight after university.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be great to actually try and make a living out of going on expeditions, taking people climbing to wonderful places in the world. So I continued doing outdoor instructing for a few years and organising expeditions just in the summer, really, July and August. And came back to the Lake District, did a few slide talks and things. And I think people just showed a great interest in what I was doing. And it was, at that time, this is nearly 30 years ago, it was very, very unusual. Virtually nobody had heard of mountains in Greenland. Nobody knew what was there. They didn't even realise there were any high mountains. It just wasn't really on the public radar. There was, of course, the Himalayas, the Alps, South America, McKinley in North America, in Alaska, etc. But yeah, Greenland just wasn't on the radar. So I organised a few expeditions each summer. It made sort of a paid-for trip for me. So I got a free climbing holiday every summer, which would otherwise cost a few £1,000s.
Yeah.
With what little I made from it, just bought more equipment. And by about the time I was late 20s, 27, 28, that sort of age, I finally packed in the freelance outdoor instructing.
Right.
And I needed to take the gamble, borrowed a load of money and set the business up.
Right. Okay. So you've really pushed yourself there. As you say, you've gone to a continent or an island, certainly that very few people travelled to beforehand. You've sort of been the vanguard of getting a lot of that set up, certainly from a UK and probably Northern European perspective. You tell me better. You've taken the risk, you've taken the gambles, and as I know, having travelled with you 2 or 3 times up there, you have set up a successful business on the ice cap.
Yeah.
Now, looking at this from a business and adventure side, obviously, and we talked beforehand about how people look at business. It's very simple to look at in the UK compared with Greenland. Now, I know that probably sounds a little bit simplistic, but having worked with you myself, what I do know is the simple things about preparation. It's very easy in this country to get out of bed 10 minutes late, drive really quick in the car, hope the motorway is quick. Doesn't matter if you've forgotten your dinner because you can buy some there, or something broke, I can nip in a shop and buy it. And we live in that society, and lots of businesses actually run a system of, I want just-in-time deliveries. I make this, my parts come from, you build a factory and supply them the day I want them, otherwise I won't give you a contract. I think Greenland's very different. What's it like working in that cold climate?
Very challenging. Yeah, in two simple words, it is extremely difficult. I think I suppose from a financial point of view, one of the things is we have to take very large risks, and those risks we take are taken up front. So at the beginning of the season, I'm having to contract private aircraft, contract freight companies, buy lots of equipment, contract staff. Normally, when I'm doing that, which is in the autumn, I have no business whatsoever for the following year. So you might be contracting yourself to £300,000 worth of logistics without having a single booking for the following year. So it is a major undertaking. I think the only way we can do that now is that I've slowly built that up over many, many years. So that figure has gone up and up and up. And I sort of have the security and the database and the number of past clients to sort of have an idea and a feel for what's going to happen. There's no way I would sort of invest that money not having a clue what was going to happen.
You would hope not.
It is a great challenge, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we organise things or organise expeditions, and something happens, something falls through. A classic one may be if we're organising logistics for a private expedition. You might get 6 or 8 climbers or skiers, could be from the UK, could be from any other country in the world. They may have all signed up, on an expedition, maybe costing £4,000 each, something like that. But then, as often happens, we often have problems getting money by the deadlines that we give people, and people delay. And I'm the same with ski holidays, The company gives you a deadline, and a couple of weeks later you wait for them to remind you, and then you leave it another week, and etc. And we get that problem. But what that can sometimes lead to is if a group does then back out at some instant, they may have only paid a £500 deposit or £700 deposit on a £4,000 trip. But I've already contracted all the logistics, and we might only be making 10% margin on that. And suddenly we're left with, £10,000–15,000 hole in the budget, and maybe only a couple of months left to actually try and fill that hole or sell those seats to other people.
Yeah, I think this is something that when I've looked at business reports, I mean, how many businesses do we know that would put serious amounts of money up with knowing there's a market there, you hope, but absolutely no bookings, no guarantees, and yet you still, as you say, have to put your cash on the table and make those preparations and make those bookings, as you said, to get aircraft, to get people, to get logistics, as I've been out with you. On the basis that you hope somebody turns up. I mean, really, one of the big things I've read about with people call it depression, the mortgage crisis, whatever people want to call it. One of the biggest issues was people working on that kind of basis, and then companies crashing, having not paid bills. And it was just like a domino effect through the industry, because somebody like yourself would put all this funding and finance and preparation and research in, and all of a sudden the money just disappeared and they were all out of work overnight. I mean, did you find the depression and what they call the subprime crash, did it cause you any issues, Paul?
It did, certainly. I would say when autumn 2008 struck, our numbers for the following year halved.
Right.
At the time, we'd had the business was growing very well. In those years, sort of 2000 to 2008, house prices were just skyrocketing. Everyone felt they had, they were just making money, just sitting on property without doing anything. Things were just going up and up in value, and people were spending on the back of that. Everyone felt like they were doing extremely well. So the business had been growing very well during that time. We'd had a lot of bigger contracts for sort of TV projects as well, that TV companies, BBC, etc., were investing in overseas projects, and we got some of that work, and we had some military contracts as well. Suddenly, when autumn 2008 hit, things just stopped, and multi-thousand-pound expeditions to remote parts of the world are a luxury. To the everyday person sitting in a tent in a snowstorm at -20, being buried, may not seem a luxury, but to those of us who love it, and for the rewards you get from it, it certainly is. So it is holidays, expensive holidays, are just the easiest thing to cut out. They're one of the very first things. And again, like I said, TV companies and military groups, etc. Even university expeditions that used to come with us every year, that whole market stopped as well.
Right. I mean, I can remember, this is going off slightly, but sitting in a storm on Baffin Island with you a few years ago, I don't think I'd been long off McKinley, and we were stuck in a tent for about 6 days as it just blasted across the ice cap. And then last year in Greenland in April, was it? Where the tents were just getting buried. I mean, and we like this. I mean, we are odd. We just love -25. Blast it in your face. Let's have it. Get the skis out. Yeah, we want to be putting it home, really, but this is what we do. This is what we love. And I think, and particularly, it's December at home now. Christmas is coming and all that. It's still very, very mild. And something you prep for more. And I think some businesses in Britain and across the world should do this better, really, is prep for weather. Because I've got people I know at work who will turn up in very little kit with nothing in the car, knowing the weather forecast is bad, and then complain when they can't get home or they get stuck. Businesses that don't organise, do we close the office? Do we get staff in with 4-wheel drives? Can people work remotely from home? How do we work when the chips are down? We have flooding, or we have, they've shut the Forth Bridge today. The Forth Road Bridge has been closed. You do that. How do you run your business? How do you get people from A to B? How do you run a logistics firm when you can't run the roads or the railways are closed due to bad weather? Now, obviously in Greenland, that's different because you get snowmobiles out and you deal with it. But that's because that's what you're used to. And I don't think businesses prepare enough for what they're not used to. All they do is think every day is the same, everything works the same, nothing ever breaks, nothing ever fails. And what I want you to talk about on that, actually, Paul, because you've got a great story with this, is about when I service my car, I take it to a garage, I give it to them, I expect it back in, 3-4 hours, fully serviced, and the chances are it will never break and it'll be lovely. Fantastic. I don't go more than 5 miles from my house and it's lovely. What do you do when a snowmobile breaks?
Not just a snowmobile, it might even be an aeroplane or a helicopter.
Okay.
Where we're going to. We have a fleet of snowmobiles up in Greenland, which of course you know, and you've travelled on them. And from the small airstrip called Constable Point, where we're based, you can get to the nearest mountains in about an hour, which isn't too bad. If something happens there and one of the snowmobiles goes down, we have a special rescue sled we can load that snowmobile onto and bring it back again to base. But some of the journeys we may be away for 3 days, and we may be doing a round trip of 400 kilometres, 250 miles. And in those situations, that's where things get very complicated and quite stressful. What we have done over the years is try to slowly increase our fleet of snowmobiles. We're only a small operation. We started with 3 and then bought another one, a 4th one, and then last year bought a 5th one. And the idea of that is that we now have redundancy. So, for example, last year we had our largest group yet that we've taken in one go en masse by snowmobile. It was a contract with the French military. They were doing some Arctic warfare training in Greenland. And they were a group of 14, and we had to take them about nearly 100 kilometres each direction. And a group like that, you need all 5. And if one packs in, then you really are, you have a problem, because you suddenly have to overload all the other snowmobiles and the sleds that they're pulling. And by doing that, that puts extra stress on those snowmobiles, so other parts can then break, etc. But normally we would have some kind of redundancy now. But this year, for example, the snowmobiles that we've got now most of them are about 4 or 5 years old. So they do get to a stage where they need a lot of major parts replacing, and new pistons, piston rings, new tracks, new gearboxes, things like that. So towards the end of this season, we were fighting to keep the show on the road by the end of a very busy and very tough winter. We did it but the way around it for us is building in redundancy.
But I know you've talked to me about needing a specific part that's in Finland.
Oh, yes.
And that's the closest part to Greenland.
Yeah. What we've done now, we try to have all the predictable spares. We've been running the snowmobile specific operation for 5 years now, and we've sort of learned all the things that break on a regular basis or go every year. So we've got most of those, but there is always something every year. If something goes wrong, and we put the snowmobiles on diagnostics, we have a laptop that has the software that can tell us exactly what's wrong with it. But yeah, it could be something very, very simple. In our first season, before we knew too much about the engines of these things, we had an electrical coil go, which is something that just provides the spark to a spark plug. Simple part, cost £70, cost me £5,000 to get that part.
Wow.
A £70 part. So, because firstly you've got to wait for the part. You've got to order the part. We send an order through to Iceland. They send it through to the manufacturers in Finland. They then express courier it through to Iceland. We then have to get a guy, go to the airport, pick it up, clear it through customs, bring it to another airport in North Iceland, put it on a private plane, because there's no sort of regular scheduled flight. So often it could be going on a private charter flight when we've got some other clients coming up. And then we, in that instant, before we'd even got to that point, we had to pay for a mechanic from Iceland to fly him up to Greenland from Iceland, just to work out what was wrong. So that whole episode of a £70 part cost me £5,000.
And I think that's something that, people perhaps in, shall we call it the Western world, don't understand, because we've created a society now where, my car's broken. I mean, stick a diagnostic on. I'm amazed you even have diagnostics on the snowmobiles, but stick a diagnostic on, get me a part, and they'll say it will be couriered here in 8 hours and it will fit it in 20 minutes and it'll cost you £100. And you go, right, yes, get on with it. Yeah. And I think people have completely forgotten that we used to have to get things either by rail, by ship. I've ordered things on the internet before on a website, and then realized that what I've bought's in China. And I thought I was buying something local, and they send it by boat and it takes 6 weeks. And it's so rare now. We expect everything. You've only got to look at a number of providers on the internet and shops now in the UK. I buy something online and we guarantee to deliver it by today.
Yeah.
For $3.99 or by tomorrow. And people are expecting that. And I think this is something people, I found, lose the plotting when the weather's bad here. They expect everything to still work and they expect it to still be there. I've got a lovely little story of a lady, a headmistress up in, I think she was in Scotland actually, who closed her school because the roads were so dangerous in her view. It was too cold and the children couldn't get out. And then she complained to the supermarket because they wouldn't deliver her shopping in the van. And I think what people have got to remember is when you are in a cold climate, whether it be Greenland, whether we have 5 feet of snow tomorrow, which I hope we do, I love to go skiing, things change.
Yeah.
Things are different. You can't expect, I mean, you tell me, Paul, do you get clients that just want things there and then and expect to have them, even if, say, conditions are bad or you've got a big melt on, you can't get over the fjord, or weather conditions are poor? Do people take that attitude onto the ice? Yeah,
I think what I've noticed over the years, there's been a definite change in the nature of, not the nature of the people who come on these kind of expeditions, but their expectations.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest things we're always talking about as a staff team up in Greenland is managing expectations.
Yeah.
Because I would say 20 years ago, when we did this sort of thing, everybody who came with us, they were mountaineers or climbers, skiers. They were used to going off to remote places. If they got stuck in a storm for 5 days, that was just part and parcel of it.
Mm.
Nowadays, for example, if they don't have 24-hour internet when they're in Greenland, they start complaining. They want to be on Facebook as soon as they get back to our base. So I think that although the people haven't changed, their attitude to wanting everything instant and accessible has, and that can sometimes prove problematic. A classic one that I remember from a number of years ago was we charter ski planes quite often, an aircraft called the Twin Otter, and we land in very remote places on the glaciers with the ski plane, maybe up to 2 hours flying away from the nearest airports. And there was one expedition and we were sat up on the edge of the Greenland ice cap, and there'd been bad weather for 3-4 days and it'd just been snowing constantly. And the plane was we'd sat for about the last 2 days of the trip until the scheduled date of the aircraft picking us up. It couldn't come that day. We sat another 2 days in bad weather because in the mountains, the aircraft have to be able to see where they're going. It can't be done by computers, navigation, etc. They've visually got to be able to do stuff and to land on the glacier. And after 4 days of sitting in this snowstorm, this guy came out of his tent over to my tent, and I was just lying, dozing, reading in the tent, blowing a hoolie outside, and he said, "Paul, I want a word." And I sort of unzipped the tent door and said, "Oh, hi, yeah, what is it?" And he said, "What are we doing today?" I said, "Well, to be honest, just the same as we've done the last few days. We can't go out climbing, we can't see anything. We just have to sit and wait." He said, "Right." He said, "I've had enough of this." He said, "I've sat here for 4 days. I've paid £5,000 for this expedition. You're chartering that aircraft. You're the boss. Get on that phone those pilots, tell them that they are coming. I need to be back." And that was his attitude. It was a case of and he was used to that sort of work environment, where he thought that throwing money and anger at something will create a result. And I just had to explain that no matter what you say, no matter what we say to a pilot, no matter how much money you offer to pay them, they will not come if they cannot see where they're going in an aircraft in the mountains.
I've seen this in places like,
more and more.
I've seen this in places like Nepal, Paul, where you take an aircraft into Lukla, which is a classic thing for people to get on the Khumbu Trail, and they bring that Western idea of, we've arrived in Kathmandu and we're flying tomorrow and we're not being delayed. And of course, you can probably see very well in Kathmandu, but if there's cloud in Lukla, it's a runway that's on about a 15-degree slope in the side of a mountain, and if you can't see it, you ain't landing. Well, not with wheels on if you're not careful. You can then go into the mountains. People are insisting, as you say, more and more on internet, solar charging. And something I find quite frightening, really, is they seem to be more concerned with what's on the internet and who's got the better solar panel than staring at one of the world's greatest mountain ranges. Well, that's their problem. But when we come back, I've also seen, again, this Western attitude of timing. We will be out on Thursday and I will have a day in Kathmandu on Friday and I will go home on Saturday. And I've seen people physically violent in Lukla because there is cloud down. No aircraft will land, as you say. They cannot put an aircraft in the floor if they can't see. And people keep coming into Lukla because it's the kind of place where people do a circuit. And I've seen punch-ups. I mean, it's horrible. But they're saying, we must get out. I'll pay more. Don't you get him out? And they bring this almost forcible managerial attitude in. I'm more important than you and I will get out. And if aircraft are coming in, they're coming in. And if they're not, well, it's the 3-day walk. I'll leave it with you. Or you sit, you be patient, and you have to put up with it. And that is something I'm seeing more and more in the adventure world.
And I think that's the problem generally. I think in today's on-demand society, people are less patient. People, and I understand it. A lot of people have very restricted holidays. If they've got a 2-week window to go away, and they only get 4 weeks holiday a year or something, and they have to spend another 3-4 days stuck somewhere in a snowstorm, that might impact. It might mean their family holiday won't take place or something. So you can sort of understand it. But at the same time, this is where I said about managing expectations. We have to be so careful now to make sure that everything about our expeditions is explained up front, and that we have watertight terms and conditions, because people will find every way possible of getting out of something or trying to claim money back, or even when you tell them these things and explain them and insist that they read not small print, very large print, so that it's pretty obvious what the risks are. Yeah. They still, they still come back to you trying to find excuses or getting angry later. And it's a sign of the times, and it's a shame.
It is, because I work in engineering, quite attitudes change because people expect everything to work first time, the car to fire first time, your lights never go off, your water never goes off, your gas always works, the Christmas dinner is on time, and we're trying to push this society of perfection. And we've only got to watch the local media or the national media here. First flake of snow, roads are closed, nobody can cope, everybody's complaining, except a few of us that go out sledging and skiing. But I think that is, if we had snow 12, 14 weeks a year solid, we'd start to cope with it, because it's so indeterminate, it's so there and gone. Like business can be there and gone, like, crises can be there and gone. people have to understand that things change, and they have to get used to that. Nothing just rolls along happily forever. But I think we've covered quite a lot this morning. I'm not going to mention at all that thankfully an aircraft of yours came into Greenland to pick me up once, Paul, because I was having an appendicitis on the ice cap, but there's an old story for you. And I did make it to Iceland just before they took it out. But I do like an adventure. Thanks for joining us, Paul. Thanks for hosting Cindy. A very interesting 5th edition of Think Like an Explorer. And hopefully, folks, we'll see you all again soon, just before Christmas with edition 6. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.